Hey guys, today we're going to talk about lesson 5.6 and 5.7, and they're going to be about the coordinate plane. See if I can spell it correctly today. Yay! And graphing. Okay, and we've kind of talked about the coordinate plane before. I can't remember honestly when it was, but I do recall talking about it. Oh, I think it was when we were doing ratios and you had to graph points. That's right. Yeah, that's when it was. So that would have been in chapter 1. So the coordinate plane, it's formed by an x and a y axis. I'm going to actually write it x-axis and y-axis intersecting at right angles at one point. Okay, and it is used to graph points in ordered pairs. Points / ordered pairs. Ordered pairs is the more mathematical term, and points are just kind of our, let's just get the word out as quickly as we can. Okay, so I'm going to describe each of the most important things. So the first one is going to be the x-axis. And I always think about going across, and it looks like this. It's what we call a horizontal line. So I'm going to put x next to it on the right, and this is a horizontal line. Think about the horizon. That's, where the sun rises or sets. It's either land, or for us, we can look at it over at the ocean. That line is called the horizon, where you have the difference between where you can see the sun, or if it goes below the horizon, we can't see it anymore. So that's our x-axis. Then we have the y-axis. And I want you to think of the word rise. So when you rise, you stand up. And that's what that line looks like. And we always put the y at the top, and this is what we call a vertical line. Do yourself a favor, figure this out now, because sometimes even by 8th grade, the kids haven't figured it out. I guess sometimes people just don't think it's that important. So what is the origin? It's the point where the axes, and this is how you spell it plural, is an E there, where the axes intersect, so that means cross each other. So I'm going to draw a picture of the x and y axis. Here's your x, here's your y, and I'm going to draw it a little bit darker. So this is the origin. It's the where all graphing begins. So that's your origin. Okay, and its coordinates are 0, 0. So if we go to the right, I'm counting by positives. If I go to the left, I'm counting by negatives. If I'm going to the top above where that dot is, then I'm counting positives. If I'm going below, I'm counting negatives. Okay? And then the last are our coordinates or ordered pairs. Sorry, I've got hair on my screen. Coordinates, ordered pairs. Okay. So basically, they tell you the directions from the origin. So tell the directions. From the origin to graph a point. Now, this ordered pair, the reason why it's called ordered, it's because we put the x number first and the y number second. So it's not an ordered pair unless we have parentheses around it. It's got to have two numbers. They're going to be separated by a comma. The x number comes first. And I'll talk about in a minute of how I'm going to use those coordinates to graph. So I'm going to write this down. Is these are in alphabetical order. Okay, so let's look at a coordinate plane. Okay, and we're going to look at it a couple different ways. So the first way we're going to look at it are some things that I would see on it. On the left side, or the right side, excuse me, I'd mark X. At the top, I'd mark Y. Then, on the lines of the graph paper, or if you don't have graph paper, you can print it out. I've done that. My roommate's son needed some graph paper, and I didn't have any at home. So he just went online, and you can determine how big you want your graph paper. You just print it out. It's pretty cool. Or you can use a ruler to evenly space out. Now what I'm going to do is instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to count only the evens. So I'm going to skip 1 and then I'm going to write 2, skip the 3 and then write the 4. And the reason why I only write the evens is so that my axes don't get too messy. Okay, and on the left side from 0, I'm going to skip the -1, but write the -2, skip the -3, then write the -4. Starting from the origin going up, I'm going to skip the 1 and write the 2, skip the 3 and write the 4. And then again, starting at the origin, I'm going to go down, skip the -1, write the -2, skip the -3 and write the -4. So notice that on my x-axis, I write my numbers below the x-axis, and on my y-axis, I write them on the left. That's pretty customary how you see people do that. Okay, and I think we've talked about this before, where what we do is we end up splitting now our axes split into 4 sections. So they're called quadrants, and this upper right-hand corner is quadrant 1, and I do remember talking about they use Roman numerals to name the quadrant. Now what's interesting is my x values are positive and my y, and my y values are positive. So that's how you land in quadrant 1 if you have positive coordinates. So for an example, let's just do this color. 2, 3 would be an example of a point that would be in that quadrant. It says you start at the origin, go right to the 2 on the x-axis, from that 2 go up to 3 on the y-axis, and finally mark your dot. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Now the funny thing is, we normally would go clockwise in just about everything, except for when it comes to naming our quadrants. We actually go counterclockwise. So quadrant 2, which is called quadrant 2 is going to be 2 Roman numeral i's. Our x's are negative, but our y's are positive. So an example of an ordered pair that would be there would be -4, 3. Okay, and we're going to continue going counterclockwise, and we get to quadrant 3. I'm going to put him underneath. And I'm going to call him the math Hades because it's all bad there, right? So we have negative x's and negative y's. So for example, we have a -1 and a -2. Now, sometimes your graphs don't come with numbers, and so you're going to have to figure out, are you counting by 1s? Are you counting by 2s? Are you counting by 5s? Do you need to count by 10s, by 100s? So you kind of have to get an idea of the spread or range of your numbers, And if you have a small range, then you're going to count by ones or twos. If you have a bigger range, you're going to count by tens, hundreds, and so on. All right, our last quadrant is quadrant 4, and then finally the Roman numerals change. It's an I before a V, so 1 before a 5, which is a 4. And these have positive x's but negative y's. And so an example of that ordered pair would be something like 4, negative 5. Okay, so let's talk about the business of graphing. What does that look like? So to graph an ordered pair, or you could even say point, we have a couple starts, or places, things we're going to do. So number 1, and I mentioned it, start at the origin. So you're just taking your pencil point to the origin. You're not marking anything. You're just kind of resting there. Then you're going to look at the quadrant, or the coordinates, and you're going to move from that origin to the x coordinate. Okay. Now you're just going to move there. Okay. So move to the x coordinate in the ordered pair. You're not going to mark anything yet, okay? Then, from that x value, so you're still hovering there at that x value, you're going to move to the y coordinate in the ordered pair. So, like when you graph, it looks like an L, okay? You're going to go across and up. It might be backwards, it might be upside down. Okay, it just depends on where it is. Right side, just depends on your numbers, but it's like a letter L, okay? Do you need to mark that? No, sometimes I do it just when I'm getting used to things. So now here comes the exciting part. We're actually ready to mark a point. So we're going to make a mark, or mark a point, and that's going to be a dot, and it's got to be visible, so don't be shy about making that dot at the location, the y coordinate, I'm going to say coord, took you to. Now remember, you're not starting at the origin with a y. You already moved over to the x coordinate, and you're just going to move up or down depending on the sign of the y coordinate. Let's say, so mark a point, dot, at the location the y coordinate took you to. Okay? Now, you will need to do one more thing, and that one more thing is going to be to label it. Now, generally speaking, we're going to label the point with a capital letter, or we're going to label it with the problem number. So if this is number 1, you would label it 1, okay? But first, if they tell you that it's A, then you're going to mark an A. Okay? Now, we're going to do some more stuff, so here's the deal. If you want to stop here and take a break, do that, and then move on. Okay? I'm going to go to my next screen, and I'm going to draw a coordinate plane. And I'm going to make this one look a little different. And by that, I'm going to count by unusual numbers. So here's my x, here's my y. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here's where it gets weird. 1, Okay? To the left, -1, -2. Going up, 1, 2, going down, -1, -2. So guess what's in between? You've got halves. Now, what you don't need to do is write these numbers out, because you should know that halfway between 1 and 2 is 1.5. Halfway between 2 and 3 would be 2.5. So that's just to let you know those are the numbers in between, but I'm not going to mark them all, okay? Now, what's nice about graph paper is that you can actually see lines, and it's going to make graphing so much easier, okay? So I'm going to mark some points. Come on, let's get that in. Sometimes it's fussy. And that's going to be point A. Point B. Go all the way up here. Notice, look where he's across from. And then point C. Oh no, I don't have a C. I just have an A and a B. And then let's see, what else do I have? I have an H. And he's here and here. Okay. So that's your H. And then there's an M not too far from him. There's your M. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, we've got a K right here. And let's see, we've got a T. Where's he at? He's below the K. Right here. So that's my T. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of directions here. So this one is like what you're going to see on 5, 6, where they're going to give you a graph, and you have to tell what the coordinates are for the points. So it says, first set of directions, list the ordered pair and quadrant for each. Okay, and they're going to give us 3 to try. So we want to figure out where B is. So let's see. So how I'm going to do B is I'm going to take, and I'm just going to kind of trace from the origin to the point where B is above. Okay, and then I'm going to trace up to the point. So let me see what those coordinates are. So I went from 0 to -2, and then I went up to 2.5. So that would be the coordinates for B. Now, what quadrant is he in? Well, remember, upper right is 1, upper left is 2, bottom left is 3, and bottom right is 4. So how I would label it is Q, and then Roman numerals 2. Okay, let's try another one. 2, and this is going to be point A. Okay, so I'm going to do A in a different color. So let's see. I start at the origin, and I go 2 tick marks over and 2 tick marks down. So let's see, that took me on the X, it took me to +1, and on the Y, it took me to -1. And that took me into quadrant 4. So that's I before V. All right, let's see, we got one more like that. And then it says find K. All right, ooh, K was an easy one. So K's just sitting on the x-axis, okay? So I go here, and I stop. And that's as far as I go. So that's at -1.5 on the x-axis. Now remember what the coordinate of the origin is, right? It's 0, 0. And I'm not going above or below the origin. So that means if I'm on an axis, one of my coordinates is going to be a 0. So what quadrant am I in? And the answer is I'm not in a quadrant. So what do I write? What axis am I on? X axis. Okay? All right, now we're going to go the other direction. And that says, find the letter of the point that matches the ordered pair. So you're going to be given an ordered pair, and list the quadrant. So we're going to practice that quadrant stuff. Okay, so number 4 says, who's at 2, 1? Okay, so I'll pick a different color. Let's do this one. So I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go 2 to the right. And I'm going to go, 2? Psh, I went only 1 to the right. I'm always so used to counting by ones. 2 to the right and up 1. Oh, so that took me to letter M. And that was in quadrant 1. Okay. Whew. Almost didn't make it through that one. Next one says find what's located at -1.5, -2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the origin. I'm going to go to -1.5. So it takes me where K is, but then I'm going to go down to -2. Oh, look where I ran into. I ran into T. And that's in that double negative place, quadrant 3. All right, and then one more like this. And we've got 1.5 and half. Okay, so let's pick another color. Let's pick, that weird mustard color. I never use this color. So I start at the origin, I go to where 1.5 is, and then I go up half, and it runs me right into H. And H is also in quadrant. Oh, I don't know why I did that. I don't need parentheses. I need a comma. Quadrant 1. Okay. Now, if you need to take a break, feel free to. We're going to do one more thing I'm going to do on the next screen, and then we'll be done. All right, so this is the last piece. We're going to do, again, another coordinate system, coordinate plane. And all the things I'm marking are mandatory. You don't get to say, oh, I don't feel like doing that. You'll lose points. Okay? And let's see, how far do I need to go? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going 5 every direction from the origin. Now I'm only going to count by 1, so again I'm going to go back to just showing my evens. Showing my evens. Okay, and then what we're going to be asked to do is to graph, directions, example, graph and label each point on the coordinate plane. Easy for me to say, right? You know, it's kind of funny is algebra is kind of doing some graphing now too. All right, so let's see. I don't even know what number we're on. I think we're on, let's see, we did 6, so I think we're on 7. So what they're going to do is they're going to say a letter, that's the name of the point is point P, and then they're going to give me the coordinates. Okay, so let's graph. So we're going to start at the origin. It says go to -2 on the x-axis. So I'm just right to here. And then I'm going to go up to 4 on the y-axis. So I'm going to label, or I'm going to make that point, and then I'm going to call it point P. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's do Q, and they'll have it at 0, -4. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay? So I'm going to start at the origin, and I don't get to go to the right or the left because that's all it says for x is 0. But then it tells me to go down to -4 on the y-axis. So that's where I actually make my point, and then I'm going to label it Q. All right, 2 more and then we'll be done. Number 9, we've got R. Ooh, got some fractions, -1/2 and -2/2. Well, they're not marked on here, so what we're going to have to do is just go halfway between the whole numbers to get to the half. Okay, so let's try this. We'll start at the origin, and we want to go to -1/2. So that's going to be halfway between 0 and -1. And then it says to go to -2/2. So that's going to be halfway between -2 and -3. And then I get to make my point. And then I'm going to label it R. Okay, last one. Yippee skippy. Number 10. Whew. Oh no, it's a decimal. Ooh, at least it's something I recognize. 4.5. That's the same as saying 4.5. Okay, so let's see. Excuse me. And remember, as you're doing this, kind of think about, well, what should the quadrant be? You know, 2 positives, it should be in quadrant 1. The first one had a -x and a positive y, should be quadrant 2. So if you understand the signs of each ordered pair, where it will take you to, that's going to make life a lot easier. So we're going to start at the origin, and we're going to go to 4.5 on the x-axis. Now again, I'm marking this on here, but you don't need to make these trails. You can just kind of hover your pencil over your graph. Then we're going to go up to 1. And then that's where the point goes, and we label that S. So that's you graphing, and there you go. Good luck with this, guys. Bye now.